And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is the Reverend Sue Frederick, author, ordained minister, clairaudient, soul regression therapist, and master numerologist. Sue was recently on the podcast about 3 months ago, and during that time, she had colon cancer and was not even aware of it. Today, she comes back to catch us up on what's going on with her health and how she's doing. Sue, welcome back. It's great to have you.
Boy, Jeff, I'll tell you, it's great to be here.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a new life right now at this moment.
Well, you look fantastic, and I think you even look more youthful and more energized than the last time I saw you.
Well, the funny story is I was actually kind of bleeding out and severely anemic and didn't know it for months. And then in March 20th, I was very weak, but shopping in Target. I'm a very stubborn person, and I just kept going.
Mm-hmm.
And I was even teaching at the Sedona Ascension Conference the week before.
Oh, wow.
And I led a meditation hike, and I taught a numerology workshop, and I gave a great keynote. And then I came home and just said, something is really, really wrong with me. But nobody seemed to have an answer because I have a heart condition, a genetic heart condition that I'm under the care of cardiologists for. And they were like, no, that can't be causing all these symptoms right now. And so I was just in a quandary. And then I went to Target just to get some laundry soap, and I fainted in Target. Turned out to be a wonderful thing because I got taken right to the ER and then right into the hospital. And 2 days later, I was diagnosed, and it was pretty serious diagnosis. And they were right away saying I needed, well, first of all, I had almost no hemoglobin in my body because I'd been bleeding for so long. So that's why you say I look better now. I mean, to think about what I was doing with almost no red blood cells in my body, that's just pure determination. So when that happened, I met the most amazing surgeon. And first I had to tell her that I had PTSD from my first husband dying of that exact same illness in 1980. And I had seen him go through so much suffering. And I said to her, you know, if this is my exit point, I'm happy to take it, but I'm not going to go through all that pain and suffering that I took care of my first husband for. And she was an extraordinary surgeon. Now she's a friend, I would say. And she just said, nope, this is going to be completely different. And she even told me this will be the healing of your PTSD, because it will go completely differently. And I felt my departed husband, Paul, in on that conversation, saying, yes, it's time you let go of this trauma that you've carried all these decades. And I didn't think it would happen this way, by me getting the exact same illness that he had, but that's what my soul had in store. And so the surgeon made plans to do the surgery, but then I had a week between that diagnosis where they were getting my blood count up. I was getting transfusions and iron infusions, all kinds of stuff for surgery. And during that time, I was able to do a lot of self-reflection. And my question to my spirit guides was, is this my soul's exit point? Because if it is, you know, I'm not going to fight that. I mean, I'm not afraid of death. And I believe that the soul is great the minute we leave the body. And I've had enough experiences outside of the body on my own that I'm quite sure about that. And so I wasn't afraid of death. I was afraid of suffering and lingering. And as that date of the surgery got closer and closer, I was surrounded and blessed to be surrounded by my enlightened girlfriends. All of my girlfriends are part of Helping Parents Heal. I think I've mentioned them before. They've all lost a child, And because of that devastating loss, they are amazing, loving, spiritually aware people. And they were the girlfriends sitting around saying, okay, Sue, so why do you think your soul chose this? And we weren't having any pity conversations. It wasn't like, oh, poor me, how did this happen? It was like, oh, isn't this interesting? Do you think this is an exit point? And what is your departed husband saying about it? And I'm so blessed that those are my friends. And that's how we were talking about it. And I was able to really get clear in those days leading up to surgery that that I was even told by Dr. Linda Bachman, who is a soul regression therapist, trainer, and author. She's one of my friends. She trained me to do that soul regression work years ago. And she had called me and said, Sue, I'm getting a message from your guides about this. Meanwhile, I was getting the same message from my guides and from all my girlfriends talking to me about it. And the message was that my soul plan, as it was originally created before this life, was complete, that I had accomplished what my soul came here to do. And I'm in my 70s, so I have no problem. I've seen so many people I love die young. And I just thought I've had a great life, a long life. But she said to me, the divine beings want people who will do work to help humanity in this troubled time. Those souls can stay if they rewrite the contract and create a new plan for the rest of their life.
Let me stop you for 1 second. Did you say that you rewrote your pre-birth contract?
Yes, that is what I did.
Okay.
And I realized that I had completed the pre-birth contract as it was, and that I could rewrite it and stay longer, but I would need to have a different focus, a different kind of purpose. And I've actually helped clients do this when they do soul regressions with me. So I was familiar about how we can do this, because everything here on earth is a blend of our free will and our plan. And so I got to work on rewriting my contract and what that would look like. And of course, we're talking metaphorically,
Right. Your old contract was what, and what did you change it to?
Yeah. And that brings me to the numbers, because the life path I've been on in this life is called the 22-4 Master Soul Path. And the 4 is the number of hard work. And any of the listeners who know numerology, who are on a 4 path like me, they understand that they're driven to work hard at whatever they do. It's going to consume them. And for me, all my life, like whatever I worked at, I worked incredibly hard. And I was a health writer for many years for magazines, and I was always very good at that and meeting every deadline, and it was a 24/7 job. And then I shifted and started doing what I currently do, working with clients, numerology readings, intuitive work, gave that 100%, filled my calendar with clients, never had a holiday practically. And 4 in numerology is the energy of that kind of work and determination. But you only choose that path because you're trying to learn something from it. And I know that in my case, I was trying to learn strength. I was trying to learn inner strength, outer strength, emotional strength, physical strength, and I accomplished it. And I only know that because my own soul had been nudging me for months, going, Sue, what comes after this? This feels like you're complete with this. And then when I had the health crisis, that's what all my girlfriends were saying. What comes next? You are complete now. And a very good girlfriend, Dr. Linda Bachman, also was helping me with that. And so I made a whole new plan and a whole new focus of my business. And And then I went into surgery. And the surgery was something that I had watched my first husband go through and not come out of well. And so I had a lot of kind of trauma around that. And Jeff, I really thought that there was a good chance I wouldn't come out of the surgery. So I was talking to my children and my husband and everyone about how, if I didn't come out of this, I was okay with that and that my soul would be free. We've all heard all of the NDE people, and I've left my body at various times. And so we all know that leaving the body is easy, and it's kind of the good part of the journey. And the physical world is the part of pain and the part of suffering, even though we're trying to shift that now to a higher frequency. And so I personally knew that I would not be afraid of death, but if I was going to stay, I wanted to change my life. And so I went through the surgery. I actually have memories of being out of my body during surgery, because I believe we all leave our bodies when we're in surgery, or in even our dreams oftentimes, or in a coma. And when I came back from surgery and woke up, my daughter was with me, and she said that I told her the first thing when I woke up. I said, "Boy, it's not hard at all to leave the human body." And then I said, "I saw the light and the dark, and I chose the light." And she reported that to me, although I had no memory. As a few minutes even went by, I had no memory of telling her that. But I'm still kind of downloading what was going on when I was in surgery. And so then I knew that I kind of turned a corner as far as, is this my soul exit point or not? It looked like, okay, then I'm going to stay. But then that night and the next day, I had a big health crisis. Um, I lost a ton of blood, and it was unexpected. And suddenly my hemoglobin was very bottomed out again, and they were rushing in the transfusions and all this. And I felt horrible. I mean, I have to be honest, I felt like my life force was draining out. And I also believe that was part of the process for me, because I had to be reborn in a metaphysical sense of looking at it. And when you study religions and the Bible and different metaphysical traditions, they all talk of the blood, right? The blood of Christ and all these things. I grew up Catholic, and we were always honoring, the body and blood of Christ, the blood representing the life force in that way. So I don't feel that it was an accident that basically I almost bled out and had to have all my blood replaced as I went through this kind of inner rebirth, so that I could now live a different life for the rest of this journey, and hopefully not the way the 22-4 path impacted me. Now I'm aiming to only feel the 22 vibration of that 22-4 path, which is lifted above the hard work, more focused on the bigger picture. Does that make sense?
During your surgery, did your doctor have to remove a large amount of your colon?
Yes. And this is where the miracle story comes in. My surgeon had done so much testing before the surgery to plan the surgery and to see what they were going to be facing. And she had told me, "I'm going to have to take a big chunk of your ascending colon out." And she had said, and we see lymph nodes that look suspicious. So I said, can you promise me that you don't think it's spread? And she said, "No, I can't promise you that." And so she went into the surgery and took out a lot of my ascending colon. She said she wanted big, clean margins. And she took out 25 lymph nodes. And she, even in the time of doing it, thought that the lymph nodes looked suspicious, was her word. And the test all came back as clear. And she called me crying to tell me this and said, Sue, you've really experienced a miracle. And I cried for a day when she called me because I knew it was a miracle.
That's great news. Well, would you say that prior to this, you were a type A personality that was a workaholic?
Yeah, but the funny thing is, Jeff, when you are that, you don't think there's any other option, you know? I mean, it wasn't like I was ever thinking, oh, well, I don't have to do all this work. I mean, I had financial pressure. I had a family. We raised 2 kids and we put them through college. I mean, most people know what I'm talking about. It wasn't like I ever thought, oh, well, I could just kick back here and everything would be okay. Um, and also I've been told that I'm from a realm, you and I have talked about this before, that my soul originated in the angelic realm. So I haven't spent a lot of lifetimes on earth. And what I've learned about that is that angelic realm souls often don't understand how to play the big money game. And I certainly never did. For me, it was always kind of hard work to make money. And that now that's one of the things I'm trying to shift is the idea that it's through doing all that hard work that I create abundance and comfort. And I've tried to shift it before in my life, but now it feels like I'm really beginning to turn that corner and see it's a different stance in life. It's rather than leaning in and feeling responsible and that you've got to help people with this work and you've got to share it and you've got to work so hard. It's about leaning back and feeling worthy as you are and like you've done enough to help, and that if you have anything to offer, it will unfold gracefully. And that's different for me.
If somebody wants to rewrite their pre-birth contract, must it be fulfilled first before being able to do so?
Well, I can't speak for other people, but I know that for me and the clients I've worked with, some action needs to be taken. In other words, we all sit around thinking in our heads of a different life we want to have and a different kind of way we're going to live, but that's just thoughts. And I believe the guides wait for us to kind of make it so, to prove that we're serious about it. And the minute we take a few steps in that direction, they go, she's ready for this next phase. Okay, let's open the door. Let's help out. And in my case, I knew I had to do certain concrete things, change the focus of my business in order to come out of this with a different life plan. And so I did need to take action on some of those things. But it's different for other people. It's different for every person. Each person has their own soul contract and their own guides and their own path and numerology. And that's how numerology helps us too, by saying, these are the pitfalls and the gifts of your path. And I know very clearly what mine are from my life path through numerology. And so when we rewrite the contract, we try to write it so that we're living more to the positive side of that life path rather than the negative.
If someone wants to discover what their contract is, how do they do that?
Well, there's, I think, a few different ways to do it. One way is really to go into a deep meditation on your own and ask the questions. I'm a huge fan of everyone learning to quiet their mind, and I've done meditation every day since the 70s, and I love the way the Hindus do it, just repeating sacred sound. I also believe in the sound healing. That's a very good way to quiet the mind. And once we can tell the mind is quiet, that's when we can open the heart and ask the questions like, what is the purpose in this moment of pain? Or is there something I'm not recognizing that if I recognize it, I can get lifted up above this challenge or this pain? Asking those kinds of questions are always answered. The other question I always asked all during this was, please lift me up above this moment of fear or this moment of pain and show me a different way to look at it. Our guides and our angels always want to help us with that. And there was one day in the hospital, the day when I was bleeding out pretty much, when my daughter told me that she saw angels standing all around the bed. And my daughter is not woo-woo at all. She's she's very logical and practical, and she's 30 years old. And for her to say that was pretty amazing. And at that time, I was in my inner world of pain, and I was calling out to the angels saying, please lift me above this and show me a different way to see it and to experience it. And what I also learned in this is fear is the mind killer for all of us. And when we're in a medical crisis, especially, the fear thoughts, when I found myself kind of hemorrhaging that day, I mean, I literally woke up in bed and in the hospital, and I don't even want to describe it. It was very terrifying. And so at that moment, I instantly went to fear, because that's the human reaction. And I spent a few minutes in that, just enough to remember, whoa, this doesn't help. This doesn't help in any way. And so then for me, it was about going back to my spiritual principles that I believe in, that I can ask for a different way, and that I can find a way to find light in that darkness. And everybody does that in a different way. For me, it was the nurse who was trying to help me, focusing on her and sending her so much love and gratitude, like just saying, oh, thank you so much for helping me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And just, instead of being angry and frustrated, which would have been a natural reaction, to just be focused on her and how much she was trying to help me, and all the people running in the room, how much they were trying to help me, and just loving on them. And that little shift of frequency really began to pull me out of my pain and my fear and my physical discomfort. It just started lifting me to a higher frequency. And I do believe that it's our job in those kind of situations. We have one job: to try to shift our frequency to a little bit more love, a little bit more gratitude, a little bit more sweetness and kindness and compassion. And if we can pull ourselves out of the darkest night of the soul to even a little bit of that, we are instantly helped by the guides and by the angels and by our departed loved ones. My father died of lung cancer many, many years ago, and I was with him, and he was such an important person in my life. I loved him so much. I still love him. And during my hospital stay, he was the primary spirit coming into my room. I could hear his voice at times when I was kind of in and out of the waking state. And he would just say these things, like he used to say them to me, like, just relax, Sue, it's all going to be okay. Let the doctors do their job. Let the nurses do their job. He was always like, we'd be in an airplane and I'd be scared, and he'd go, let the pilot do their job, trust in the goodness of this universe. And so when my father's spirit was with me in the hospital room saying, let them do their job, I knew he was with me. And it reminded me, yes, I do believe this is a good divine order universe, and that whatever we're going through, even when it is painful and scary, it is a moment when we're being brought to some kind of a growth point or a realization or an awakening that is going to serve us in the long run, even if in the moment it doesn't seem that way. And trying to remember that goodness of the universe and goodness of the divine order that I believe in, that was my test. Can you do it even when you feel like you're dying?
At this point in your life, what changes have you made and what are you doing differently? Or how are you living differently?
Yeah. Well, we personally just decided that we were going to put our house on the market and downsize again. And that was just our personal decision, based on, taking some of the pressure off of us. And so we've taken steps in that. And the other piece for me is I'm now really focused on doing my group classes, group workshops. I've got a lot of really fun ones coming up that I'm teaching in the next couple of months. And I'm canceling most of my individual client sessions. Very sorry about that with my clients. But I've had to do it because my body still is not up to being able to do that kind of work anymore. Because I did have a big colon surgery and a lot of my colon removed, and it does have some consequences, that I'm learning to be good with. And so at this point, I can't even see clients every day the way I had been. So the funny thing is, though, I can sit here in front of Zoom and I can teach a 3-hour workshop. It's a different expenditure of energy for me. This kind of thing is easier. Also, because my clients are usually in pain and I'm helping them that way. And I'm also downloading guidance for them. It's a very intense way that I've always worked with clients. And the reason I'm successful is that it helps them, but I've got to let go of that. And I'm in the middle of doing it. So I don't know what comes next, Jeff. All I know is that those are the steps that I knew had to be taken for me to be able to be comfortable here now in my new body and my new health diagnosis and in my new future. And I also want to say that my surgeon had told me that this experience would erase the PTSD that I had of memories of my husband suffering. And she was completely right, because all the things I'd seen him go through, I never personally went through. I had different, kinds of crises, very different from his. And so it was very healing for me. I know that's crazy to say, but the trauma I watched him go through, mine was completely different. And it healed me in many, many ways. So I hope that makes sense.
Well, you may be able to help far more people teaching classes than just at a one-on-one basis.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. So I've got them all posted on my website. I have a really fun one coming up in May for only, $39, how to get through the dark night of the soul. So, fun things like that. In June, I'm teaching how to rewrite your soul contract. So classes that will help everyone really understand how to do this work on their own when they're going through a crisis or a challenge. I'm also still always going to teach my sacred numerology. And I taught a class of numerology on Saturday, and it was so fun. And I'll never quit doing that. I love that. And in fact, the numbers were really a comfort for me during all of this. When I was first put into the hospital, the day when I had fainted and was brought in and they were doing all those tests, the room number digited to the number 9. And in numerology, we teach that 9 is the number of surrender, and you can't tell what's coming next. And the lesson is trust and surrender, and you've reached a culmination point. And so in that 9 frequency hospital room, all these diagnoses were coming, from the doctors. And I just had to surrender and, go, okay, well, I don't know where this is going to go or if I'm going to live through it, but I surrendered to whatever this is about. And there's a great relief in that, to not be fighting. And I am such a fighter, Jeff. And I've been so stubborn and fighting so much in my life for everything. And, fighting these last few months when I felt so sick and so drained of energy and didn't know what was wrong with me. And I was still giving keynotes and I was still leading hikes. I mean, that's fighting, And so for me to be in that room and go, I surrender with love to whatever this lesson is about. That was very healing for me. And looking at the number 9 in that room helped me to do that. And then certain points, like the doctor, they come in to get me for surgery, and I'm looking at the clock and it says 11:11. All my clients are always like, I always see 11:11. And we know those are angel numbers. They're just little signs that we're all being guided and helped and lifted up and that we're not alone. And those were everywhere. And then just other little amazing signs, like my dad's name was Thomas, but he was called Tommy, which is kind of unusual in today's world to be called Tommy. And when I went to the room where they prepare you for surgery, the first technician who came in, his name was Tommy. It was on the thing. And I just knew that's my dad giving me a nod, saying, we're here. You're not alone. You got this. And then when I came out of surgery, I was randomly assigned to the room number 3311. And in numerology, those are two very powerful master soul numbers, 33 and 11. And they both mean that we're held by the angels, that we are in touch with the God consciousness, and that we are being lifted up. And so I came out of surgery and there were those numbers above my head, 3311. All my girlfriends would come in the room and go, oh, I can't believe that above your head are those two master soul numbers, 3311. And they digited down to the number 8. And 8 is the number of empowerment. So in that hospital room, facing my kind of life and death struggle as it played out the next day after surgery, I had to own my power. And in order to even get out of the hospital, I had to do a whole lot of owning my power. And part of that were things like, okay, they told me that if I can get up and walk, it's going to help stop some of these other symptoms. And so when you're feeling like you're at the bottom of the world and you can't hardly breathe, forcing myself to get up and lean on a walker like an old lady and go for a walk. I mean, anybody who's been through surgery knows that feeling the first time you put your feet on the floor and the room spins and you're just determined you're going to start owning your power and taking your life back. And so all those little numbers of empowerment comforted me, and master soul numbers comforted me. And we can all see those, we can all look for them, and they're always reminders that we're not alone.
Can you give my audience some tips on how to shift into a higher frequency?
Yeah. When we're afraid, it is so easy to get lost in that fear. And, a simple way, especially if we're in a health problem, there's a way of feeling, I don't know how to word this correctly. Okay. There's a surrender to what's happening with gratitude. So for example, I'm feeling nauseous in the hospital, and most of us hate feeling nauseous. That's like the worst thing for many of us. And yet I remembered this moment in my spiritual studies where somebody had said to me, Sue, if you're going to throw up for God, or throw up for your spiritual teacher, or, throw up for the angels, offer it as a blessing. And that turns it around in your head. So now you're not this victim to what's happening in your body. Instead, you're sort of turning it into a sacred act. Or I'm bleeding out. Okay, well, then I'm bleeding out for the angelic realm here with gratitude, with surrender. Those simple little twists of your way of thinking help shift us to a higher frequency. And another way for me is if there's another person in the room with me, not just in spirit, because I did feel the spirits around me, but if there's a person in real form in the room, focusing on them and just sending them unconditional love. And that is so much easier than we think it is. But you can literally look at a person, a random stranger, and then just start sending them unconditional love that comes from the God source. And you can love them for their shoes or their hair or their smile or anything, and just start pumping that love. And that shifts our frequency. Gratitude, love, sweetness. Often if we're upset, the last thing we want to do is be kind to people. And yet the flip is, if I'm upset and I'm suddenly kind to you about something, guess what? Now I feel better. That's the beauty of spiritual truth and spiritual work, is that the more we send out good energy to other people, the more it helps us, even in our moment of darkest pain and fear.
Whenever somebody's suffering any type of crisis in their life, how do they look for some sort of higher meaning to help them get through it?
Well, hopefully people have already been sort of looking at their life in a different way. That's why I love working with grieving people, because once we've had a devastating loss, our soul is desperate to find a different way to understand life and death and to see it differently. And so grief often is the gift that gets us looking at life through the soul's lens rather than the ego mind. And so whatever we're going through, there's usually two ways we can look at it. And one way is I can look at it through my human mind or my ego. And the human mind loves to focus on everything that's falling apart, everything that's going bad, everything that could go bad, and how terrible I'm feeling. And yet just one little, please help me see this from the higher soul perspective, that little request, if you can barely even get that sentence put together, then you start going, why would my soul have put me through this if my soul is only functioning for my learning and my highest good, not to punish? This is not a punishing universe. This is a loving divine order universe. So why would my soul have chosen to put me through this suffering and pain? And that question opens us up to look at it in a different way. Nothing here is a punishment. Everything is a different opportunity to grow and see it through the soul's lens. So for me, hitting this possible exit point here and suddenly going through the diagnosis I dreaded my whole life, the one diagnosis I never wanted, the exact illness that my husband Paul had suffered from, that I had cared for him from when I was only 30. That to have that land on my plate after living a very healthy life, after eating well and just being so healthy all my life, to have that diagnosis, that's the dark night of the soul for me. And suddenly to go, so why would my soul put me through this? And my answer was from my highest self right away was, there's a gift in this. Just hang on. You're going to see it. And I had to keep believing that, even when things just seemed like they were going very south for me. But there was also something I wanted to share that I think your viewers will appreciate too, is the day that I got the diagnosis that was soul crushing to me, that I had the same thing that my husband Paul had had. I sent everybody home. The room was filled with friends and family, and I was like, I'm tired. I need to go to sleep. But really what I needed to be alone, and I needed to laugh. So Jeff, that night after the diagnosis, I'm alone in my hospital room, and I have my little iPhone, and I put on some of my favorite comedy movies. And in my life, whenever I've been up against a wall, one of the first things I know I need to do is laugh. And so that night in my hospital room, I'm watching my all-time favorite comedy, which happens to be about ghosts and about what happens when we die, and it's a comedy. And I'm sitting there alone in the room, laughing and laughing and laughing with that movie. And the nurses, they would come in and go, "Are you okay? Like, do you want to talk about what's happening?" "Nope, leave me alone." I'm laughing. And I spent all night watching my favorite comedies. And I have a great movie therapy list for anybody who ever needs it. And by the next day, when the sun came up, after having laughed in the face of the worst diagnosis I could ever get, I knew I was going to find my way through it, whether it was life or death. Nothing was certain, but that I would be able to walk through it with grace.
Well, if people want to find out more about your new classes, do they go to your website?
Yeah, SueFrederick.com. And on there, I've got all these workshops and they can sign up there. And I also have group online readings, and those are so great. Only 10 people can be in those groups, and everyone is guaranteed to get a numerology intuitive reading from me. And people are finding the group experience very helpful because they hear other people's stories and they see how those people are getting their readings. And so they always go, "Wow, I learned so much from being part of the group as well." So I'm doing those. I've got 2 of those coming up pretty soon. And then I've got how to rewrite your soul plan, how to get through the worst dark night of the soul, a lot of different ways you can do those classes with me. And then I'll be teaching another numerology class again soon. And I teach on Zoom, and they're not expensive classes. So I hope people will come and join me because people are really loving these classes. I already started teaching them.
Are you going to be speaking at any more conventions or retreats?
Yeah. Here's the funny thing is I already had a bunch of speaking gigs on the books for the next few months. And the big ones I'm excited about are the Helping Parents Heal conference this summer, 27,000 grieving parents coming to a conference that is so healing and so powerful, and I get to speak there. And then after that, I'm speaking at the International Association of Near-Death Studies conference. That's also in August. So, those opportunities are so fun and so great. And my current experience will now be very much a part of what I'm talking about. Because in the past, I've often talked about numerology and my 3 shared death experiences of connecting with the spirits of my departed loved ones when they crossed, and my out-of-body vision that says there's always more light than dark, and we just have to seek the light. Now, all of that's been put into practice with my own near-death experience, so to speak. So all of this will be informing my future work.
If people want to reach out to you and ask you questions, are you open to that?
Yeah, and they can reach me through my website, has a contact form. And so they can definitely go there. And when they click on any of the opportunities on the website, there'll be an email address as well. They can reach out to me. But yeah, I mean, I'm really sorry that I'm not doing individual sessions, but I do believe people are really going to enjoy these bigger group kinds of things that I'll be doing.
Sue, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
We're all on the earth realm, and the earth realm and the physical body, there's a lot of pain and suffering here, and we can't deny it. But we're also spirit, we're also divine beings at our core, and that is our true essence. And so the minute we try to get more in touch with that spirit part of us, or we call it our higher self, whatever we want to call it, we get lifted up above the pain, and we can find a way through it with more ease and more grace. That's hard for us humans, but we can do it. And I love helping people figure out how to do that. Even if it just means laughter. Laughter is one of the easiest ways that we can start shifting back into our higher self and our spirit to get through a crisis.
Sue, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.